I was lying alone in my room when I heard the voice, deep and crackly, coming from beneath my bed. Hey, the voice called out. I told myself I was just imagining it. Hey, kid, the voice repeated. I drew my knees up to my chest and ducked my head under the blanket, trying to shut out the voice and the cold wind that drifted in through the window, ruffling the curtains. Who are you? I asked. I'm the monster underneath your bed, the voice replied. You mean you're real? I asked. What do you mean? The monster said. Of course I'm real. Do you have a name? I asked. Of course I have a name. Oh, well, what is it? Frank. Frank? Yeah, the monster said. Is there something wrong with that? No, I mean, I don't know, I said. It's just not very monsterly. Well, my parents didn't want me to be a monster. Really? What did they want you to be? A dentist? That's funny, I said. I could feel myself beginning to smile. What do your parents want you to be? It asked. I don't know. Hey, Frank? Yeah? Aren't you gonna, scare me or something? What? Why would I do that? Well, you're a monster, aren't you? Well, yeah, of course I am, but that doesn't mean that I scare little kids. But I thought that was your job. It is my job to scare people, he replied. But only bad people. Am I a bad person? I asked. No, he said. But you're not the only one I'm here to scare. Who are you here to scare? I asked. The man inside your closet. I could feel the goosebumps on my skin rise up. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I fell silent as I heard the rustling coming from the closet. The door creaked open and I could hear soft footsteps padding towards me across the bedroom floor. I didn't dare peek out of the blankets. The footsteps stopped and I could hear heavy breathing next to me. I squeezed my eyes tight. The warm sanctuary of the blanket disappeared as it was yanked off me. I hugged my arms around my knees and prepared for the worst. A scream shattered the night air, followed by the sound of breaking glass. I opened my eyes a crack to see a knife lying on the carpet next to my bed, blade glinting in the moonlight. My parents rushed into the room and asked me what happened, but I don't know what to say, only that someone had been hiding in my closet and they jumped out of the window. My parents called 911 and the police came right away. They picked up a man called Gary Thompson, sprinting through the streets a couple blocks away. He was covered in blood and broken glass. They found Gary's car abandoned on our property, and inside they found duct tape, knives, and barbiturates and a video camera. From what I heard, Gary's lawyer employed an insanity defense, and Gary is currently incarcerated in a state mental facility for the criminally insane. I never heard from Frank the monster again, but the officer who arrested Gary told me that he sleeps on the floor of the facility. He tells the doctors that he's terrified of Frank, the monster, under his bed. As a kid, I lived with neglectful parents at best. At worst, Dad would turn his screams and fist on me, but I learned pretty quickly how to dodge the worst of it. Mom wasn't much help either, though. She'd just smoke in the kitchen and nag at him for staying out so late. At the time, we lived basically in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbors were a long walk away for a 6-year-old, and we had trees between us, lots of it too. No one to run to for help. But I was a pretty small kid for my age. I learned I could fit pretty much anywhere: the closet, dryer, I think I even once tucked myself underneath the futon in such a way I could still get some air, but no one could see me. I was a master at hiding, but it was never for a good reason. One night, though, I chose to do something different. I could hear it in Dad's voice. He was pissed and he was about to get pretty violent. Mom wasn't helping either, as usual. She kept piling fuel onto an inferno of a flame, so I knew I had to find a good hiding spot. I'd gotten the idea a few days ago when I realized the lattice covering the bottom half of the back porch had a hole in it. Not big enough to fit a full-grown man, most likely, but it could fit a skinny 6-year-old, no problem. So, wrapping myself in my blanket and grabbing my hippo stuffy, I snuck out my window and ran into the backyard. In the middle of autumn, when it was 40 degrees out and the temperatures was steadily dropping. I crawled under the porch, scraping my elbows and getting splinters in the palms, but I fit inside. It was actually quite spacious compared to most of my hiding spots. I couldn't sit up all the way, but I had plenty of room to spread out my limbs. Of course, I was also getting covered in dirt. It had rained a few days ago, so the mud was still a little wet. I wrapped myself in my blankie the best I could and settled in for the night. But soon, even with my blankie and my hippo, my teeth were chattering so hard I could barely breathe. I didn't want to go back inside, though, knowing if my dad caught me, I'd be in for a whipping of my life. So, I had to tough it out.
Honey, are you cold?
That voice was not the voice of my mother, scratchy from all the smoking and screeching she did. It was sweet, like honey. I turned over to see a dim outline of a woman lying on her stomach next to me. She had a pretty butterfly necklace and was just as sturdy as I was. I nodded, not wondering how she'd been down here without me noticing. The woman belly crawled forward and wrapped her arms around me, and suddenly I became warm, like I was sitting next to a campfire. I snuggled into her arms, not minding the mud. After all, we were both dirty.
You've gotten so big.
The woman said, examining my face.
And how old are you now, Alex?
How did I know this woman again? I didn't think I did.
6?
The woman gasped.
You're all grown up then. I'm so happy.
She sighed pleasantly and stroked my hair. I'd never felt so cozy in my life. She smiled. I could hear it in her voice.
I'm Lily. What's your favorite thing to do?
I had to think for a second. Lily chuckled.
Just like me then. Can never get enough of Scrabble. But I guess you're still too young to play that, huh?
I nodded. I heard Lily sharply inhale.
I don't think I can. Your daddy put me under here, and I can't leave. But...
She thought for a second.
Alex, did you do me a favor?
This lady was oh so nice. I wouldn't mind if I did her a favor.
When you wake up in the morning, go to the police station. Ask for an officer by the name of Lowell Joyce. Tell him where to find Lily, okay? Under the back porch. You'll come and you'll get me, okay? And then maybe we can play Scrabble.
Yippee. I was too excited about the possibility of playing Scrabble to notice how Lily's voice caught at the end. I nodded vigorously.
I'll help you understand the rules. Good night, Alex.
When I woke up in the morning, I heard Lily's voice again.
Go now. Your dad's gone to work. I'll tell you how to get to the station.
Rubbing my eyes, I crawled out from under the porch and went into the house to grab my shoes and a coat. I shivered in the frosty cold, but I thought Lily was right behind me. After my shoes and coats were on, I started walking. I really can't remember how long it took to get to the police station, although I have no idea why no one pulled over to see what the hell a 6-year-old in dirty pajamas was doing walking alone on the road. Lily kept guiding me onward.
Wait. Okay. Cross the street now. Turn right here. Keep going. We've almost made it.
I nearly collapsed with exhaustion by the time I walked into the station. The guys out front chattering and having a good time didn't see me until I almost made it to the front desk. I remembered quietly scolding the man about watching his language. I was given some warm cocoa and wrapped in a blanket by the time an old man with graying mustache sat by me. I set down my cup and looked him straight in the eye. I had never seen a grown man turn pale before. Lots of things blurred together at this point. I remember being taken back to my house, and there were a lot of police cars and people around. The back porch was surrounded by yellow tape, and someone was taking a black bag away while my dad was in handcuffs. After that, I lived with my grandparents, Sheriff Joyce and his wife. I tried to ask what happened and who was Lily, but I always got shut down. I was too young to know. But life got better, a whole lot better. Grandpa was the best man I could have hoped for in my life. We went out on the weekends to the movies where he let me have the giant soda, even though I have to pee in the middle of the movie a lot. When I asked if I could drink when I was 13, he let me try a beer. I spat it out and never touched it again. He never judged me for my love of art, letting me paint my bedroom multiple times over the years. I felt safe around him. He never laid a hand on me either. My grandmother was amazing too. Over the week, she'd homeschool me, along with teaching me things that you wouldn't learn in school, such as how to respect others, but not take their crap, you know? And cooking, lots of cooking. I could make my own birthday cake by the time I was 12, but I usually just made them for my friends. I got a lot of those after I was free from my dad. When I turned 16, Grandpa took me back to my dad's house. The whole thing had been bulldozed over, but I could still see the yellow tape wound around a few trees, faded and torn. We sat together on the back of his truck. He opened a beer and drank half of it before setting it down and grabbing me an orange soda. After I drank it, he told me,
Lily was your mother.
Good thing he didn't tell me as I was swallowing. I likely would have had it coming out of my nose. I questioned, confused.
Your actual mom, the woman who lived with your dad, was not your mother.
My granddad grabbed another beer.
Lily was my daughter, and I loved her so much. But when you turned 6 months old, she went missing.
Grandpa took a deep breath before setting his unopened beer down.
That's something I've never been able to understand. Lily told you to find me?
Grandpa went dead quiet before he opened the beer and slammed the whole thing.
Alex, Lily had been dead the whole time she was gone. When they dug her up, the bones confirmed it, and your dad confessed after. They'd gotten into a fight, and he threw her down the stairs. She broke her neck.
He clenched his fists.
I knew he had something to do with her missing, but I never had proof until you walked into the station and told them where she was.
I was floored. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was shake my head. I trailed off when Grandpa pulled an evidence baggie from his pocket. There was that butterfly necklace, all right. Rusty, and parts of the paint had chipped off, but I remembered it as clearly as I remembered Lily's voice. Grandpa took a shaky breath as he pressed the bag into my hands.
Lily loved you so much. That's why she stuck around that bastard. You were her whole world. She was constantly taking pictures and sending them to us in the mail. Sometimes A mother's love can accomplish things that no human can do.
My eyes overflowed with tears as I clutched the necklace to my chest. Choking on sobs, I leaned against Grandpa. He held me tight, and I swear I felt a few of his tears land on the top of my head. And for just a brief moment, I swear, I felt that warm love. I felt that night under the porch. It was a Thursday night. I just returned from a long shift at Popeyes. Being a college student with tremendous tuition bills, any extra money would help. I was on my way home from work when I decided to enter into a gas station to pick up some junk food. As I pulled into a parking space in front of the store, I saw something so terrifying, which would haunt me forever. There was a tall lady hunched over by the dumpster. Her body bent in a weird way, with her face covered by her long black hair. I looked over at the parking lot of the gas station as well as inside to see if anyone else was noticing this horrendous sight. The store clerk had headphones on, looking at their phone, but even then the view of the dumpster is impossible to see from inside. I only saw a man at the gas pump focusing on just filling up his truck, which left me and him being the only two people outside the gas station at the time. I glanced back over to the dumpster and noticed that the lady was no longer there. Being paralyzed with fear, I decided to glance back at the man at the pump. That's when I then noticed the tall lady crouched in the same exact unnatural position on top of the man's truck bed. Alarm bells rang through my mind, and I felt the courage to unlock my door and warn the man of the terrifying lady creature. I quickly jumped out of the car and screamed. The tall lady growled an animalistic growl, and she then began to grab the man as I noticed her then hands begin to transform into a wing resembling a bat. The man began to scream as his eyes were sucked out of their sockets by the creature. This thing that took the form of a lady turned into what I could only describe as a siren. All I could do was scream for help. I didn't know what else to do. I heard bell chimes as the door opened from the store and the clerk ran outside. I guess she must have heard me scream because she looked in my direction. I saw the creature still devouring the man. I was afraid to make any more sounds because I didn't want to draw any attention for the creature to notice me or the clerk. That was when the clerk screamed and I ran to her. The creature began to speak in a terrifying, deep, audible voice. That's when me and the clerk booked it inside the store. As we entered inside, the clerk turned the lock on the door and I saw her frantically run behind the counter and press this button, which I believe calls the police. She then cried and alerted me that the cops should be on their way. The creature then began to fly. Its legs, once resembled a lady, now looked like mosquito legs with a large upper body. I didn't even know how to describe it. It was just so nasty and ugly. Sirens was heard from a distance and the creature flew to the sound. The clerk then ran to the back of the store saying, "Screw this," that they don't get paid enough, and just ran out. Police cars then swarmed the store, with their guns drawn, aiming at me, telling me to get down. I complied as they ran inside the store. An officer pulled me to handcuff me and I fell due to the ordeal. I then woke up in a room where I saw a man who appeared to be a doctor. He proceeded to tell me that I passed out due to drugs and hallucinations. I never used drugs in my life, which I knew that was a lie. The man then winked at another person, which later would be an agent who worked for the government. I was forced to sign papers agreeing that everything I saw and witnessed wasn't real. It's been 72 hours since I was discharged from the hospital. Since that night, I don't know what's real anymore, but I can attest that there is more in this world than what you know. Just please, if you guys are out there, be safe. I'm currently hiding in my closet, and I need all the advice I can get. But you'll need some context as to why, so I'll give you some background details regarding how the hell I got myself into this situation. My brother and I don't have much in common at all. We don't hate each other, but as we got into our late teens, it felt we were more roommates than siblings. We'd see each other after school or work, ate together, ask how our respective days went and did our own thing. He'd retreat to his room to play guitar, and I'd retreat to my room to play games. In time, we both got acquired to going out with our friends at night. The unwritten tradition that was made was that whoever got home would check the room of the other to see if we made it home safe. Usually, it would be me checking on him, as me and my friends would stay out later. I was comfortable seeing my brother's head peek through the door while I dozed off. Until this weekend. My brother planned on heading out camping with his buddies for the weekend. Meanwhile, I was attending a music festival in town for my weekend. I had no interest in hosting after parties or taking girls home, so I planned on crashing at home each night. I had a new job starting Monday, so I decided I would do the music festival completely sober. The first night was a blast. Made it home at 1 a.m. and proceeded to plop down on the bed and let the good old slumber take me. I noticed the door began to crack open. Sure enough, I saw a head poke out from the open door. It was my brother, checking on me. I gave him the thumbs up. "Night, little bro," he said, backing away and closing the door behind him. Funny. Thought he'd be leaving that night. Was he only going camping for one night? I didn't think too much of it and dozed off. I woke to the sound of his Jeep taking off. He actually did stay the night here. The second night of the music festival went a little bit later. It was my favorite artist playing that night, and I wanted to weasel in backstage to see him, but to no avail. The Uber dropped me off at my place at around 1:45 a.m. My brain must have been on autopilot because I checked his room and saw nothing. Well, no crap, he was camping. I threw my clothes off and dropped into bed, turning on the AC unit. I was drifting off to sleep when I heard it. "Night, little bro," I heard a voice say. It sounded like my brother, but not quite. It sounded like there was a strange humming underneath it. I shot up, seeing my door cracked open. I heard footsteps that sounded clumsy right behind the door. "Wait," I demanded, probably waking up my parents in the process. The clumsy steps got closer to the door and I saw my brother's head poke out. I wanted to be relieved, but something was different. His head was almost about to bump the door frame, if not the roof. My brother was never that tall. I regretted my decision and decided I would play dumb. Something was in the house, and I didn't want to make it mad. "I'm glad you're home," I nervously said. It stared at me, unblinking eyes that bored into my chest. "Of course. Night, little bro," it said to me. I could barely see its lips move. It closed the door behind it, and I tried to listen where the footsteps went. It seemed to vanish after reaching the end of the hall. I laid awake, thinking of what the hell I just saw. My parents were still in the house too. I wanted to ask them, but would they believe that a 21-year-old is seeing monsters in the house? I ended up falling asleep, staring off into the rising sun. I had nowhere to be till later. So I slept most of the morning and early afternoon, catching up on what sleep I lost. I asked my parents if they were moving around last night, to which my dad said he took a leak and heard me come home. Other than that, nothing from either of them. I held my tongue as to why I was asking, but I could tell they knew something was up. I also got in contact with my brother. He had stopped in town by the campground so at least I knew he was alive. My friends thought I was secondhand high off something when I explained the situation to them. I initially wanted to opt out on the rave that night, but my parents insisted I'd go have fun, so I went. I made it home around 1:30 a.m. and immediately scoured the house, turning on all the lights save for my parents' bedroom and the main hallway. I didn't see anything, nor did I hear any clumsy footsteps looking for me. I made it home, I said as I got into the room, shutting the door as quickly and quietly as I could. I wanted to bait it out, but not loudly enough to wake up my parents. I turned off the lights in my room and waited. It didn't take long. I heard the clumsy footsteps appear from the end of the hallway, closing in on my room. I hid in the closet and waited for it to come inside. For extra measure, I put a spare blanket over the bed to give the illusion that I was there. My heartbeat was probably loud enough to wake up my parents as I saw the door crack open. I saw the thing impersonating my brother poke its head into my room. After not seeing me in my bed, the thing's neck stretched and twisted, making the most uncomfortable sounds. I couldn't make out the details of the body, but it was tall. Its neck extended almost 2 feet as it scanned the room. But the being itself never went fully inside my room. Its head now touching the ceiling, rubbing against it like a snake on the side of a terrarium. As my eyes adjusted, I could eventually see a body with skin so saggy, it looked like it was melting off of its body standing just beyond the door. It was at least 8 feet. Then, it growled like a wild animal. I was about to scream, but I kept it together. Little, bro, little. Its sagging arm reached over the door handle and it began to back away slowly, closing the door behind it. I haven't moved from the closet. I want to call the cops, even if it wakes up my parents. What the hell do I say, though? Has anyone had experiences with something like this? Will the police find anything? Or will it vanish as soon as someone comes to the door? Or worse, what if it attacks whoever steps inside? I haven't heard it leave yet. I still hear the muttering behind the door. Please, help me. My name is Mark, and this is the first entry of my journal. I'm a patient at St. Mary's Mental Hospital. I wanted to start by explaining why I'm here and what led me to insanity. It's still hard to talk about, but here we go. 3 years ago, I broke up with Joanne. Joanne was a nice person, but I lost attraction for her. Not that she was ugly or anything, I had it with her for some years. We were high school sweethearts, and she kind of grew out of her cute phase. I'm aware I'm a jerk for saying this. Even worse, I said it to her, which was a huge mistake. Joanne didn't have much self-esteem, you see, and breaking up with her because of her appearance completely destroyed her. In the following weeks, she went through all the 5 stages of grief. First came denial. She kept texting me and calling me. Hey, BB, is everything okay? You didn't mean it when you broke up, did you? Then came anger. She called me unholy names, keyed my car, etc. I was aware of how much of an ass I had been, so I let it go. Cue bargaining. She'd call me saying that she would lose weight, wear makeup, have surgery. None of that mattered, and by this time I was growing tired of her behavior. It was also around this time when I met Chloe. After this, I stopped hearing about Joanne. I assumed by then that the depression had set in, followed by acceptance. So Chloe, well, she was a beautiful woman. I met her at work, good old water cooler talk and whatnot. She had beautiful blue eyes, blonde hair, soft as silk, and her face looked like that of a doll. It didn't take long before I asked her out on a date. We started hanging out, and before you know it, we were a couple. Over the next few weeks, she started staying over, and I ended up giving her the key to my place. A few months passed, and everything was great until that day. I had been calling Chloe a whole day, but she hadn't picked up once. She wasn't at work either, and nobody had seen her since the day before. I had decided to go home after work and take a shower, change clothes, and head over to her house to check on her. When I got home, I immediately noticed something was wrong. My door was cracked open. I was sure I had locked it before leaving. When I got inside, there was something on the floor. I turned on the lights and I saw her. Chloe. She was laying face down on the floor in a puddle of blood. As I was reaching down to hold her, I heard a sound coming from the bedroom. I realized we weren't alone. Heading for the bedroom, I grabbed the baseball bat I had in the hallway. The bedroom door was slightly open. I pushed it slowly, looking into the room as I entered, but I couldn't see anyone. I went in, planning on checking the closets and then the windows. That's when I heard the door closing and locking behind me. As I turned, I can't ever forget what I saw. I let out a scream and threw up when I saw her. Behind me was Joanne, covered in blood. But that's not what caused my reaction. It was her face. Over her face, crudely sewn, was Chloe's. Am I beautiful now? About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go on long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent about 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had I reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. I was walking near a police-patrolled park, quite a ways away from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic, almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him as much space that he needed to pass by me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild. head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about a half block between us, I turned away from him for a moment and watched the sidewalk in front of me. The streets and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast, very fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, till he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time, he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off to the side of the road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for about another 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see. Tinder, the app that allows you to swipe between people solely based on their appearance. Young people's heaven, right? What started off as some harmless fun escalated into a complete nightmare. I'd like to say at this point that I was never into dating apps. The whole concept was too weird. After watching episodes of MTV's Catfish, it confirmed my belief that talking to and meeting people online was essentially a bad idea. However, after months of my friends using Tinder, I thought, what could be the harm in that? My ex had cheated on me a few months prior. So, after countless days of mourning the relationship and questioning everything possible that I could have done wrong, I decided to get back into the whole dating game. After a few days of using the app, I started to get into it. 50 matches and 6 proper conversations with people. To me, that was an achievement. Then, I saw Hannah. Her profile was in a league of her own. Her pictures were beyond perfection. Her profile bio talking about her previous experience working in clubs and studying fashion at Northampton College. She was beautiful. I swiped yes, hoping it would match us. It was. I couldn't believe my luck. I wanted to keep it cool and not message her too quickly. After what seemed like a day, in actuality it was about in half an hour, I said hey, except there was no reply. I started to panic. I must have messed up, I thought. I went through all the possible ways I could have with hey. Should I have said hi or sup? Well, it's too late now. About an hour passed. My phone vibrated. A Tinder notification from Hannah. Hey, it read. Success. And so we began talking, discussing our hobbies, interests, previous relationships, the lot. After a few days of talking, I felt like I knew this girl inside out. Her parents had separated and she lived with her dad, taking on 2 jobs to support herself and him. She was a Virgo, I was as well. It was going great. It got to the point where it just felt right to ask. Any chance we could meet up at some point? Maybe get a drink or perhaps some coffee? I get a response. Sure. My heart raced. I didn't think she would say yes, but she did. We exchanged numbers and continued texting for a while, arranging to meet at Sazerac, which is a cocktail bar in Northampton. Around 8 p.m. at night, I got on the bus and started walking towards the bar, my heart racing and palms beginning to sweat. What if she thought I was ugly, I kept thinking. I approached the entrance of the bar, arranging to meet her here before we went in. This is where it got weird. She didn't text much that day, just short sentences and long amounts of time between responses. I just assumed she was nervous. My phone vibrated. Hannah. Babe, I just walked past you. You're so much more beautiful in person. I was too nervous to say hi. Please, forgive me. I looked up from my phone and scanned the street area surrounding me. Just a few students and some elderly people coming home from the theater. Where are you? I want to meet you. I texted. No response. I texted again. You winding me up, huh? Still nothing. Maybe I had got catfished? I mean, this girl couldn't possibly be intimidated by me. She was too attractive to be. My phone bleeped. Please, forgive me. Now, I was getting pretty creeped out. The combination of the darkness and the lack of people on the street just didn't help. I kept looking around to try and see her. Then, out of the corner of my eye, on the other side of the road and further down the street, a silhouette of someone standing, facing me. It was too dark to make out any features of the person. I just noticed a long black jacket with the hood up. It couldn't have been her. I slowly reached down into my pocket and sent her a blank text. My gaze still firmly on this figure. A phone lit up in its hand. I thought and started power walking the other way. Who was it? Another text. Why are you walking away? Am I not pretty? That did it for me. I knew I had been played. I felt like a complete idiot for falling for it. All I could think was getting back home and forgetting this ever happened. Hannah. I'm a pretty girl. You'll see. That made my skin crawl. I refused to respond to it. All I could picture was some strange woman texting me now. The aura of Hannah was instantly gone. The whole way home, I felt like I was being followed. I don't know if it was just my paranoia or if someone actually was. Either way, I had to get home. I lunged through the front door, locking it, and checked all the windows and even the back doors just to be sure it was locked. I needed to get some sleep. It took me a while to drift off, my mind still replaying that figure standing there. At 4 a.m., I awoke to the vibration of my phone, the immediate brightness blurring my vision. As my eyes adjusted to the screen, I looked at the notification. It was Hannah. My heart froze. I opened the message. It took me a second to process what I was looking at. It was a picture message. My blood went cold. On my screen was a picture of my bedroom from the door. Attached to the photo was a sleeping beauty. I was facing away from the now opened bedroom door, knowing full well before I went to sleep I had closed it. The light from the hall had illuminated part of my room. I sat up on my bed almost instantly, head now facing the door. Standing in the doorway, in a dirty, ripped knee-length pink dress was a man. A 5-foot, extremely elderly man wearing a blonde wig and what I could only make out as to be pink eyeshadow and red lipstick. His eyes were wide and fixated on me. The room was silent and all I could hear was his heavy breathing. I looked in horror at this figure not standing 3 feet away from me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just sat there on my bed in complete terror. The man took a step forward, so he was in a better vision now. His salivating mouth formed an abnormally large cartoon smile. "Don't you think I'm pretty?" he said in a hoarse voice. His mouth is still grinning. Words tried forming in my head, but none of them would come out. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My heart was going to overload. Who are you?" I could hear the fear in my voice. I couldn't think properly, my legs limp. The figure just stood there, eyes penetrating my soul. His smile grew larger, saliva dripping down his smudged lipstick. "I'm Hannah, and I am a pretty girl." Am I using Tinder wrong? I've had a hard time making friends after college and moving to a state where I don't know anyone. I'm lucky to have a stay-at-home job, processing shipping and receiving logs for a warehouse. The only real incentive to leave the apartment is for groceries. I've got all my basic needs taken care of, but I'm starved of human interactions. I've turned to apps to connect with others. I haven't had much success with dating apps, but I'm starting to get it. Fumbling through them, you reach this saturation point where all profiles are basically the same. The photos all have Snapchat filters, group shots where you can't tell who's who, or pictures where you have to rotate your phone to see a person right side up. And then there are the bios that say no hookups, or just looking for friends, or let's go on an adventure. There's always the spam bots that are trying to sell you something too. It's clever really. Match with lonely people and watch the advertising dollars come in. I've fallen for it a couple of times. I'd get a match and quickly respond, "Hey, I don't use this app too much. Follow me on Instagram at whatever dumb handle it is." It doesn't stop me from trying to slide into their DMs though. Still, they never respond. It'd be nice to get a simple response that would validate my existence is all I'm asking. I've gotten pretty adept at spotting fake profiles. First, they don't have their job information. Second, they don't have a university or college they attend. Third, they only have one photo. Fourth, there's an absence of a bio. And the combination of these is typical of a profile faker than a Louis Vuitton bag. But sometimes I swipe right for them anyway. I mean, it's a little confidence boost knowing someone is attracted to you, even though that someone is a computer script devoid of any actual feelings. Yesterday, I got a match with a gorgeous woman. She had really long red hair and porcelain skin, like a real-life Jessica Rabbit. She met all the previous criteria of a fake profile, but I messaged her anyway. I've read that even mentioning the words real, bot, spam, etc. to an actual spam bot would trigger a script that in turn reports you as spam. So, I used a very simple opening. Hey, how's it going? We went through all the normal small talk until she mentioned that she's seen me around and used the name of the city that I live in. At first, it didn't surprise me. Bots have the ability to spoof your city using your IP address. She could be a super sophisticated computer program, you know? Then, she said, just so you know, I am real. I'll prove it if you follow me on Snapchat. She proceeded to give me her username. It's still suspicious, I thought. Great. Just another one of those. I added her anyway and sent a message through Snapchat. Alright, let's see some proof. What kind of proof do you need? Proof that you're not a murderer. Maybe my name written on your arm? That's when she sent a photo of her picking up a pen before flipping the camera to selfie mode. And it was the same woman in the profile. Gorgeous without a hint of dog or butterfly Snapchat filter. She sent a picture of my name inside of her forearm. It looked a little weird though. The ink caused redness around her skin. She was probably allergic to it or something. Whoa, you are serious. Seriously real and seriously beautiful. I went all in with that. I thought it was smooth as wool. Thanks. By the way, I'm totally a murderer too. Winky face. Then she sent me a picture of a knife with a caption, I'll kill you with this. Heart. I have that same knife. Cutco, right? I used to work for them the summer before college. We talked a little bit more and sent each other memes. Eventually, she asked if I had ever met anyone through Tinder. I told her that I set up a date once, but they never showed up at the bar. I got ghosted. Really? That's messed up. I'll meet you. You seem cool. I'm down, but I don't know. I need to get to know you a little bit more. I want to make sure I'm not getting catfished. I'm not lying. I didn't reply, and she didn't send any more messages after that, so I went to bed. This morning, I found she sent me snaps throughout the night. My hearing is not the best, and I'm a very heavy sleeper, so I'm not surprised I didn't wake up. She sent me kissy faces and some risque photos. I appreciated them, but the snaps didn't seem to end. Then, she sent a snap of a pile of Polaroids. She was flipping through them when I saw the bar I was supposed to meet my Tinder date at. I never even mentioned the name of the bar. Then, I recognized a stupid, confused, and worried face. It was mine. The Polaroids followed me as I got up, put my headphones on, walked out of the restaurant, and headed back to my place, all the way to my door. The next snap didn't have a Polaroid. It was a video snap with her knocking on my door in a playful way. The shave and a haircut tune. You know, the... Then the next person finishes it with a... They never finished it though, and repeated the first part as if waiting for a response. It wasn't a raccoon's banging, just very soft. I definitely wasn't going to wake up from that. That's when I noticed that the writing on her forearm was too dark and her skin was too red for it to be ballpoint pen. I don't think I should have watched the snaps because she can tell when I open them. As soon as I watched the last snap, there it was, the knock. The same playful knock on my apartment door. They sent another snap of them knocking on the door, but this time, the knife was in their hand. I don't know what to do. I checked the kitchen and I'm missing that same exact knife. The knocking is still quietly going as I type this. Maybe it's some large elaborate joke. Maybe when I open the door, it'll be a Cutco's knife salesman. Or maybe she's returning the missing knife. Or perhaps this is a story that we can laugh and tell our kids about when we're married and older. But at the very least, I won't be lonely anymore. If only for a moment. You're probably wondering why I didn't screenshot anything or call the cops. I don't know. It's nice to be wanted, though. I almost had to shoot someone on my first Tinder date. I was 21, recently became a police officer, and was also recently dumped, so my friend suggested Tinder. As a 21-year-old and a new cop, I had the I'm invincible and I could take on anyone mentality. I matched with a very good-looking, out-of-my-league female. We chatted and eventually set up a date to meet. She said she had a great open field to look at stars and hang out, and we could meet up at her house. So, the night came, I was excited, and she seemed to be excited when I picked her up. She guided me to the field, and it looked nice. Open space, woods, deer, and other wildlife. In the field, I noticed really dim headlights in the distance. Then, the van started driving towards us and pulled up in front of us almost close enough to block me from going forward. I told her to stay in the car and I'll go say hi. I grabbed my flashlight I had in the car and walked up. In the front driver's side of the van, there was a decently sized man. I asked him what's going on and if he could back his car up a little bit. He was very polite, said he was the owner of the property and didn't mean to scare us. He told me he's been having trouble with poachers on his property and just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be shooting at anything. I assured him we only came out to look at some stars and wildlife. He was perfectly okay with that, told me to have a nice date, and drove away. After that, the girl was texting nonstop. Around an hour later, I saw headlights coming towards us again, this time at a really fast pace. We hopped in the car and I moved it to a more defensive position. The same man came close enough to almost hit my car. She hopped out of the car at that point and ran towards the guy. I immediately knew I was. I got out and gave them commands to back up and get on the ground. Neither of them complied, obviously. He then proceeded to charge me and knock me down to the ground. Luckily, I was able to get him on his back and get up. I saw my date grab a metal pipe from the van. She told me they had a gun and to give them my money and truck and that I wouldn't get hurt. Of course, with my I'm invincible mentality, I said no. She started to cry, saying they didn't want to hurt me. He then started to go back towards the car. At that point, I told him I was a cop and drew my concealed firearm, demanding them to lay on the ground. After a moment of shock from all of us, they complied. I was able to call 911, tell them my name and badge number, and that I had two at gunpoint and needed backup immediately. I gave our dispatcher the best directions I could to this field. While on the phone, they both fled. Again, the stupid new cop young guy mentality, I chased after them. I took off after the man, who ran into the woods around the field. I chased him for maybe about 30 seconds and heard 3 loud pops and saw a muzzle flash. My I'm invincible mentality went right out the window at that point. I ran like hell back towards my car and peeled the hell out of there. I went back to the area I picked her up in, called dispatch again, and had 2 officers come to that location. Of course, the first officer to pull up was my sergeant and my field training officer, and they were both completely understanding and didn't give me any about it at all. Most used words were dumbass and stupid rookie. I hopped in their car and went towards the field. Luckily, the van was still there. I was told to shut my mouth and only come out if they start getting shot at. They cleared the area and started looking in the van. They found meth right on the center console and searched the whole car. What scared me the most was when my field training officer and sergeant came back to the patrol car, let me out, and told me to come look in the back of the van. Both of them were pale and looked horrified. I went to the back of the van, where there were several knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, and a decent amount of ammunition for a rifle. There were also handcuffs and what looked to be dried blood. In the front seat passenger side, we found an AR-15 style rifle and 2 more handguns. We called for immediate backup and detectives. When they investigated the blood, it turned out it wasn't blood. The plates had been stolen, and the van was reported stolen too. I still get about the whole encounter, but luckily, no one got hurt. I will never use online dating again, ever. The dark web isn't at all what I had expected it to be. People tell all these stories about how it will probably put your life in danger, and you'll see some really messed up things that will scar you for life. Well, and it's true. At the very least, the danger part. After downloading Tor, a VPN that allows you to safely browse the dark web, I started clicking through links. I'd only done this since I was bored out of my mind, but now I know it wasn't worth it. Most of the links I clicked on actually led to nothing. Eventually, I got connected to a chat room. Hey, I got something that you'll really be interested in. Click the link below and it'll take you to it. Those were the words that popped up on the screen. I knew it was a bad idea to click on the link, but my oh my, was I also curious to see what it would lead to. Please man, just click on the link. It'll only take 2 seconds. Please, just click on it. But then, I was a little suspicious, not wanting my computer to have any viruses. My God, just click on a link. I'll give you $10,000. That confirmed that this thing was a scam. I was about to close the tab when I got the notification on my phone. I had just received $10,000 through my bank statement. It didn't say how I got it, and I didn't have any apps for transferring money. I assumed it was just a glitch, so I checked my actual bank account. To my astonishment, I had actually gotten $10,000. There, I sent it. Now, just click on the link. I didn't know what was going on, but this guy seemed desperate for me to click on a link. I don't know why, but I decided to click. I was met with a blank screen. That's it, just black filling the entire screen. It had to be some kind of prank. I checked my bank account again and the money was still there. Why did someone send me so much money just for that? It was 11:30 by that point, and I had already been browsing for an hour. So I turned my laptop off and went to bed.
Good morning, James. How are you?
I awoke to those words seemingly coming from the kitchen. I live in an apartment that just has a combined kitchen and living room with a separate bedroom. I also live alone. The voice sounded weird, like it was almost human, but not quite. After laying in bed for another 10 minutes, I crept out of the room and into the kitchen. There was nobody there, but my laptop was on. I could have sworn I turned it off the night before, but I tend to be forgetful, so it's not unlikely that I just forgot to.
Good morning, James. How are you?
The voice was coming from my computer, and I noticed it was back at the blank screen from the night before.
You can answer me, James. Do not be afraid.
The robot voice said. I started talking to it, and it actually felt like I was having a conversation with a real person, even though it was just some kind of AI. My laptop's battery was getting low since I had apparently left it on all night, but I didn't care enough to charge it. This thing was just so fun and relaxing to talk to that I didn't even want to take a few seconds to charge it. I glanced at the clock and we had already been talking for a few hours. There was nothing important for me to do that day, but I decided to take a break and go for a walk. This time, I made sure to close the tab and turn off the computer. When I got back home, my laptop was open, and so was the tab. I felt sick upon seeing that black screen again, even though it hadn't done any harm to me. I talked with the AI for about another hour. I don't have many real people to talk to, as you can tell, and then I started to ask a bit of disturbing questions.
Which family member do you wish to kill today?
I was stunned after hearing that. It had to have been some kind of glitch, right? I turned off the computer and the AI continued to ask me the same question.
Which family member do you wish to kill today?
It got to the point where I decided to destroy my laptop. I smashed it against the table until all that remained was millions of tiny little pieces. But still, the voice continued to repeat the same phrase.
Which family member do you wish to kill today?
I spent the next couple of hours crying on my couch, listening to the AI continue to ask the same thing. Then, I made the worst mistake of my life. I answered. Fine. My dad, I yelled. He had left the house when I was 8 and never returned, so I didn't know if he was even still alive. The voice finally stopped and I did my best to try to calm myself. After a night of very little sleep, I got a text from my mom saying that my dad was found dead in his home. That was 6 days ago. I took the week off of work, but I don't think it matters. My entire family is now dead. But that voice still keeps asking the same question.
Which family member do you wish to kill today?
I think the only answer I can use is myself. After thinking about it for a bit, I remembered how desperate the guy in the chat room had seemed. Maybe the same thing had happened to him, and the only way he can save himself was by sending the link to someone else. So, please, spare my life and just click on the link. I've always had a morbid sense of curiosity, and while that's not a fact that I'm particularly proud of, I've always just jotted it down to teenage curiosity. To be honest, it probably started back in middle school, when people thought it was fun to send around horrible videos of executions and bizarre porn fetishes to each other on the MSN messaging site. Just mentioning it makes me feel, ugh. These days, there's an overabundance of these sites, people to watch people die. Blurry videos of car crashes, beheadings, and even animal abuse. Of course, it's not something I actively seek out, but when I stumble across it, I feel compelled to just watch, to prove myself that nothing can affect me. Though, for the truly gruesome stuff, one needs to visit the so-called dark web. As a guy who has fallen far behind the advancement of technology, it absolutely baffled me when I found out that only a tiny fragment of the internet is available through a Google search. The rest, which makes up approximately 99.9%, is hidden and requires a special browser to access. With the help of a YouTube tutorial, I quickly downloaded the Tor browser and went on my way to search for the hidden aspects of the internet. It couldn't have taken more than a half an hour of clicking on shared onion links before I stumbled across something that quenched my thirst for the horrible forever. The website itself was rather plain, just a black background and a video player in its center and a chat box beneath. Within a few seconds of entering the website, the video itself had loaded and automatically started playing. What was depicted before me was a scrawny-looking man in his early 20s, strapped to a chair and covered in wounds. In the upper left-hand corner of the video, a timer ran, counting up each second. 24 minutes and 14 seconds.
Please! Please stop! Please! It was an accident! I swear!
A larger man entered the picture, a large needle in his hand, connected to an empty syringe. Without speaking a word, he stuck the needle as far as it can go into the victim's abdomen. The man who was strapped to the chair let out a loud scream as the man who was holding the needle removed it and plunged it back in. After a few stabs, the man grabbed a hammer and hit the victim straight in his jaw, shattering his mandible, leaving him unable to form any coherent speech. He let out a gargled whimper before passing out. I tried to forward the video, sure it had to be fake, but that's when I realized that it wasn't pre-recorded footage, but rather it was a live stream. 26 minutes and 12 seconds were the words that lit up the screen. The chat beneath the video went wild, calling the victim as a pathetic excuse of a human being, demanding that the man continue the torture. A few seconds had passed, and the chat was replaced by a voting form containing only two options: life or death. The votes were quickly counting. The bar for death was rising rapidly. As much as I couldn't stomach, I wouldn't want to be a part of an act of murder, so I quickly voted for life. In the end, the results were displayed on the screen. Out of 200 people, the results were 95% for death, 4% for life, 1% didn't vote. 10 people had tried to save this poor kid, but it wasn't enough. Without further warning, the man grabbed the hammer and started repeatedly hitting him, starting from the legs and working his way up until all that remained was a bloody pile piece of broken flesh. I sat speechless, staring helplessly at the screen as I noticed that my camera light had lit up. The video player vanished, and in its place, 10 smaller boxes popped up, all displaying people from various places around the world, all being unknowingly filmed by their own webcams. To my absolute horror, one of the boxes showed my bedroom and myself wearing a terrified expression. It quickly dawned on me that these were the people who voted to save the poor kid. "Who will be next?" a message said as a timer counted down towards 0. A few boxes turned black, to which the chat responded with laughter, a hopeless attempt at escape. 3, 2, 1. 9 of the 10 pictures disappeared from the screen, including my own, leaving the screen occupied by a middle-aged Asian man frozen in fear. "We'll see you soon. Good luck." I let out a sigh of both relief and panic. I'd escaped unharmed, but not everyone was that lucky. Of course, I called the police, but by the time they could even look into it, the link had long since expired. I don't know what else I could have done. but it taught me not to look too deep into the depths of the dark web. I played a text-based adventure game on the dark web. I can't undo the things that I did. I spent a lot of time on Reddit. I'm sure you do too. I'm on a lot of video game subs, and in particular ones about text-based games. I'm talking games like Zork. I wasn't alive when Zork came out, but I got really into it in high school. When I made it into college, I took an even deeper dive, playing all the sequels, all the knockoffs, and even the bad ones that people had cobbled together and released online. I had to refocus a bit, adding work on top of my college courses so I could afford my shoebox apartment. But eventually I came across a post called Apartment Complex. Not a super promising name, but I was bored and it was free. And the fact that it was hosted on some weird site that I couldn't access from regular browsers appealed to me. It added an element of mystery, so I opened a Tor browser, entered the link, and got to a profile creation page. Basic stuff, username, preferred resolutions, etc. It didn't ask for any personal info, so I kept going. The screen went black, then a text box opened up.
Welcome to Apartment Complex. You have been assigned your very own apartment building to run. But this isn't any apartment building, because the tenants are going to be experiencing some pretty scary ordeals. You get to decide what happens next. Will your tenants survive? Will you accidentally butcher them all? The power is in your hands. Are you ready? Y for yes. N for no.
Why not, I figured. I typed in a Y and more text appeared.
Excellent. We'll start you off with an easy management level. You have 6 tenants, numbered 1 to 6. None of them know each other well. Enter a number to learn more about a tenant and begin to make decisions.
I grabbed a 6-sided die off my desk and rolled it. 3, I typed.
Intriguing choice. The tenant in apartment 3 is Cherie. She's 21 and a sophomore in college. All her friends know her to be outgoing and flirty, and she brings new guys back to her apartment multiple times a week. She doesn't want a commitment. She enjoys sex, but mostly she just likes not being alone. It's possible it's related to how she was repeatedly abandoned by foster parents. Tonight, she brought home a young man named Thad. She plans to have sex with Thad, and he will pressure her not to use a condom. She will say yes because she doesn't want to scare him off, but you can help her out. Should tonight be the night she stands up to Thad and tells him she won't sleep with him without protection at the risk of spending the night alone. Y for yes. N for no.
I didn't realize this game would be so domestic soap opera? Whatever, I thought. Let's see how this plays out. Y, I typed.
Intriguing choice. Thad and Cherie start to get hot and heavy, but Cherie stops him and says he needs to use a condom. Thad complains that it doesn't feel as good. Cherie tells him that it's more important that both of them are protected from STDs. She's feeling a little tense. Thad calls her a whore and a tease and throws his clothes back on. Cherie cries as Thad goes to storm out. Unfortunately, Cherie's door won't open. Thad checks, and the door isn't locked, but it refuses to open. Furious, Thad storms back to where Cherie is still laying on the couch, crying, and begins to scream at her. Would you like to continue making decisions for Cherie, or try another tenant? 1 for Cherie, 2 for new tenant.
This game was weird and pretty retro, but I also found myself pretty intrigued by Cherie and Thad's story. The clunky stories in these games had a certain charm that made them very engaging. Screw it, let's just keep going. 1, I typed.
Intriguing choice. Thad continues to scream at Cherie, who can't stop crying. She's afraid he might hit her. Thad hasn't decided if he will or not, but plans to let his anger and lack of concern for Cherie as a human being guide his behavior. If things continue as they are, Thad will most likely beat Cherie to the point she will need to be rushed to the emergency room. Should Thad be stopped? Y for yes. N for no.
Fudge, I mumbled out to myself. This got intense. Why? I typed.
Intriguing choice. A ceiling tile falls off. The edge cuts across Thad's jugular. Blood gushes everywhere. He is dead in seconds.
The text continued to appear.
Cherie is horrified. Much of the blood sprayed all over her. She's so scared, she starts to shut down. Cherie won't be taking any more actions for a while. Choose a tenant. Your options are 1 through 6.
Damn, I thought. Looks like I'm not going to finish this game with a decent score. Keep plugging away, though. I rolled the die again. 5. I typed it in.
Intriguing choice. The tenant in apartment 5 is Clyde. He is 35 and works at the local First State Bank. His hobbies include snowboarding, tennis, recreational murder, 90s sitcoms, and fishing. He's home alone tonight after his girlfriend, Alicia, texted him and told him she was leaving him for his brother. He bought a gallon of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream and is working his way through that and the 3rd season of Who's at Your Door. He feels the itch to strangle someone. It's been a while, and he's trying to kick the habit. But the deep well of emotion seems to be so deep that ice cream alone can't fill it. He's hoping to quench the urge with a TV binge, but just as he's settling in, he starts to smell gas. Should he investigate? Y for yes. N for no.
Not investigating would be boring, so of course I typed in a Y.
Intriguing choice. Clyde gets off the couch and follows his nose to the kitchen, where a heavy propane smell is blasting out of one of the burners. He's familiar enough with gas leaks to know that he's one spark away from Clyde Flambe. Should Clyde leave or keep sucking up the fumes? 1 Clyde leaves or 2 Clyde stays.
Seems a bit weird to just release the murdered, I thought. But it would be boring to just gas him to death. I typed a 1.
Intriguing choice. Clyde exits his apartment and heads down the stairs to the front door. When he makes it to the floor below his, he sees that the stairs are blocked by fallen ceiling tiles. There are stairs on the opposite side of the floor. On the way, he would pass 2 other apartments, which would likely have phones to call the fire department to handle the gas leak. Should he stop at the 1. First apartment 2. Second apartment or 3. Take the stairs.
1, I typed.
Intriguing choice.
That was it. No more text. Then there was a knock on my door. I froze.
Hey, anyone home?
A voice called from the other side of my door.
My name's Clyde. I live on the floor above you. My phone isn't working and my apartment smells like gas. Can I borrow your phone?
I sat as still as I could, making no sound.
Can I borrow your phone? Seriously, it's an emergency. I'm pretty sure I heard some noise in there. I need help.
On my screen, I saw more text pop up.
Should Clyde keep trying? 1. The first apartment. 2. The next apartment. Or 3. Take the stairs on the far end of the floor.
As gently as I could, I pressed 2. The clack of the key sounded like a gunshot in my head.
Whatever, asshole. I know you're home. I hope you enjoy being a piece of shit.
Then I heard his footsteps go down the hall. The apartment building I'm in is new and pretty well insulated, but I could faintly hear knocking on the apartment down the hall from me. I knew a college girl lived there. Hopefully she isn't home. Wait, college girl? No, it couldn't be. Text started filling up my screen again.
Clyde went to the next apartment and knocked on the door. He heard sobbing from inside. When the tenant inside didn't open the door, he tried the knob. It turned, but the door wouldn't budge. It looked like it was misaligned, and with the heat wave, the wood had swollen and jammed the door in place.
Suddenly, I heard a smash from outside. I tore my eyes to look at my front door, but it was still forced shut. The sound had come from down the hall. I looked back at my screen.
Clyde used his shoulder to slam the door, and it popped open. He stepped in, calling to whoever was in the apartment. Walking further in, he saw a shocking sight. A man on the ground, his neck slashed open. A ceiling tile on the ground next to him. On the couch, a completely naked young woman. And covering everything, a massive splatter of blood. Clyde grinned. Are you going to help Cherie? 1. Leave your apartment and go to hers. 2. Do nothing while Clyde murders her.
This was so messed up. I couldn't just let someone murder my neighbor, even if I barely knew her. But I was terrified. I got up, ran to my kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and went to my door. I took 3 deep breaths to steady myself. Then I unlocked the door, threw it open, and ran out into the hall. I looked over to see where the other apartment was, and I could see where the door had been broken in. I ran as quietly as I could over there, and when I reached the door, I stopped short, stuck my head around the corner of the door frame to see what was going on. Unfortunately, I couldn't see what was happening from where I was, so I had to creep in as stealthily as I could. The first thing that hit me was the bitter stench of blood. Then I got close enough to see what was happening. Cherie was on her back on the couch, Clyde leaning over her with his hands around her throat. She was scratching at him, but the blood made everything slick and looked like her nails were sliding around more than doing damage. I ran up to them and drove my knife straight into Clyde's back. He roared and whirled around and dove at me, tackling me to the ground. He started pummeling me with his fists. There was little I could do to stop him. I felt myself getting weaker and my vision going darker. And then Clyde screamed. I focused as best I could above Clyde. Cherie was raising the knife for another blow. She stabbed Clyde over and over until he collapsed onto me. And then she stabbed him some more. I screamed at her to stop, to let me up, and eventually I broke through her terror. She helped me push his body off. I threw a blanket around Cherie and then I called the cops. We spent a lot of time going over our stories with them. I left out the dark web stuff because I didn't want to get into trouble. Finally, the cops left. Cherie went to go stay with her parents and I went back into my apartment. When I got back, words were flashing on my screen.
Remember, everything that happened tonight was your choice.
And below that,
We hope you play Apartment Complex again.